My name is Haruto, and I solve problems. That's it. That's what I do. At my job, they call me a systems engineer, which is just a fancy way of saying I fix the things other people are too stupid to see are broken in the first place. I don't hate people, not really. I just find them inefficient. They're messy variables in an otherwise clean equation. They let feelings and office politics and the desire to be liked get in the way of logic. They are walking, talking sources of data corruption. So I keep to myself. I do my work, I collect my paycheck, and I go home. My apartment is my real sanctuary. It's a closed system, perfectly optimized. My books are arranged by subject, then author, then publication year. My kitchen utensils are laid out like surgical tools. My media is digitally cataloged and backed up on 3 separate air-gapped drives. I spend my evenings building intricate 1/3500 scale models of historical warships, currently the Yamato, a masterpiece of engineering. Each piece is placed with tweezers, each decal perfectly aligned. The rest of my time is spent solving logic puzzles with 1,000 variables. It's quiet. It's controlled. Everything makes sense here. And the single person I have to rely on is me. That's the most important rule. My goal has always been simple. Build a life so stable, so independent, that I'd never need anyone ever again. I wasn't always like this. Years ago, back in university, I was part of a group. There were 5 of us. We thought we were a unit, a team, a fatal flaw in risk assessment. One weekend, we went hiking up in the mountains. A storm was rolling in, a bad one. I checked 3 separate weather models that morning. The data was clear. 110 millimeters of rain expected in a 6-hour window with a 92% probability of flash floods in the canyons we planned to explore. I mentioned it, of course. I said, statistically, this is a bad idea. The risk-to-reward ratio is unbalanced. But they just laughed. They called me an overthinker. It was peer pressure, that illogical emotional force that makes smart people do profoundly stupid things. They wanted an adventure. And I, for one single catastrophic moment, wanted to belong more than I wanted to be right. So I went quiet. I didn't argue. I didn't lay out the data points or show them the charts. I let the inefficiency win. I remember the roar of the water, a sound so loud it became a physical pressure. I remember the screaming, a useless expulsion of air. I remember seeing our friend Kenji get swept away, his hands grasping at nothing. The rest of us barely made it out. We survived, but our team was broken. My guilt wasn't just that Kenji died, it was that I had run the simulation in my head. I saw the disastrous outcome, and I still allowed my calculations to be overruled by a group vote. I trusted the group over the data. That day, I made a promise. Never again would my safety or my life depend on the emotional, unpredictable whims of other people. My solitude is not about loneliness. It's about survival. It's about control. Which is why, when my power cut out last night at 22:17, my first thought wasn't fear, it was annoyance, an unexpected variable. But then, I heard the sound. A heavy metallic thunk as the new industrial-grade deadbolt I didn't install slid into place on my front door. My system had been compromised from the outside. Then, a voice came from my speakers, a calm, digital, unfamiliar voice that had no business being in my network. "Hello, Haruto. I see you've locked yourself away from the world. Let's see how well you work with others. I want to play a game."
The others panicked. Tanaka blustered, demanding someone fix this. Yui cried at a high-pitched, useless sound that grated on my nerves. Inefficient. I saw the problem, broke it down into component parts: gas, ignition sources, electrified exit. The puzzle in the tunnel was a basic circuit bypass. "Quiet," I snapped. The sudden, cold authority in my voice cut through their noise. "Tanaka, your body mass is a liability. You will go first and test the floorboards, but you will not touch the lanterns. Yui, your hands are small. You will handle the wires. I will tell you which ones to cut. Do exactly as I say." I directed them like puppets, my voice cold and steady, guiding them through the puzzle while my mind raced 10 steps ahead, calculating the physics of the swinging lanterns and pooling liquid. We survived. The next room was worse. A network of steam pipes lined the walls of a chamber that was slowly filling with water. "The sequence is the key," the voice rattled. "Don't get burned." The pipes would vent scalding steam in a complex, timed pattern. I saw it immediately. It was a simple 8-step binary sequence. "Move on my count. 3, 2, 1, now." Tanaka, in his arrogance, thought he saw a shortcut and moved half a second early. The steam caught his arm. He screamed, but his error taught me a valuable lesson. His ego was a variable that needed to be suppressed. I had to factor in his stupidity as a fixed parameter. "You move when I tell you to move," I said, grabbing his unburned arm. "Your instincts are a statistical anomaly that will get us killed." He stared at me, his bluster broken by pain and fear. He was learning. Game after game, it was the same. They would fall apart, and I would analyze, calculate, and direct. We faced a logic gate that required 3 keypads to be activated simultaneously, but the combinations for each were on opposite walls, and one had to be read backwards. Yui's panic made her dyslexic. Tanaka's fingers were too thick for the keypad. I had to physically restrain Yui, holding her shoulders and forcing her to breathe. "Read the numbers, Yui. That is your only function." I turned to Tanaka. "You will press what I say when I say it. Do not think, just do." They were messy variables, but they were my variables to control. I wasn't part of their team, I was their operator. I was the central processing unit, and they were simple, flawed peripherals. I learned to use Tanaka's bulk to break down weak barriers, and Yui's small size to crawl into spaces I couldn't. I learned to use Tanaka's anger as a motivator, and Yui's fear as a leash. I hated them. I hated their weakness, their smell, their reliance on me. But my system was working. We were alive because my logic was in control. The memory of Kenji, of my one failure, was being overwritten with each new success. This time, I wasn't letting the group vote. This time, I was the dictator. Finally, after a grueling test involving counterweights and a rising floor, a door opened, just for me. It led to a small, white, hexagonal room, clean, sterile. It was like a piece of my apartment, a sanctuary of order in the midst of this filthy chaos. In the center was a simple console with 2 buttons, one red, one green. A large monitor on the wall flickered to life, showing a live feed of the room I'd just left. Tanaka and Yui were huddled together, looking exhausted and terrified. The guttural voice returned, this time with a note of something like respect. "You, Haruto, are different. You see the system. You understand. The others, they are just components, flawed, broken. But you see the design. So you get a choice. Your final evaluation.
My first instinct was to debug. I grabbed my laptop, hands steady, and ran a full diagnostic on my home network. It was pristine. No intrusions, no malware, no unauthorized connections. I checked my audio driver stack. No new kernel modules. The voice had come through my speakers, but it had left no trace. It was impossible. The deadbolt was real, though. A thick slab of steel that wasn't there an hour ago. Logic began to fray at the edges. The voice spoke again, its tone unchanged. Your first task is a social one. There is a compulsory team-building exercise at work tonight. Karaoke. Your boss, Mr. Tanaka, is expecting you. Attendance is not optional. This was the real horror. I hated these forced social rituals. The fake smiles, the strategic obsequiousness, the drunken, inefficient bonding over shared mediocrity. But the voice, coupled with the impossible lock on my door, felt less like a suggestion and more like a command from a system I couldn't understand. A system that had somehow gained complete, root-level control. The bolt on my door slid open with another loud thunk. The choice was clear. Go to the karaoke bar or find out what happened if I stayed. I chose the path with more data points. I went. The night was a blur of cheap whiskey and painfully off-key corporate anthems. It was a sensory assault. The air was thick with cigarette smoke and spilled beer. I remember Mr. Tanaka, my bloated, over-enthusiastic boss, slinging a heavy, damp arm around my shoulder, his breath hot and sour. "Haruto, you came! You see? This is how we build synergy!" I remember the junior marketing associate, a young woman named Yui, looking just as uncomfortable as I felt, her eyes darting to the exit. I remember a drink that Tanaka insisted I have. It tasted slightly off, a bitter chemical note under the sugar, and I registered the anomaly, but too late. Then, nothing. Just a long, dark, silent drop into unconsciousness, a complete system shutdown. I woke up to a throbbing headache and the smell of rust and cold concrete. My cheek was pressed to the floor, the chill seeping into my bones. A single fluorescent light hummed overhead at a dissonant 60.1 hertz, casting a sickly, sterile glare on my surroundings. This wasn't my apartment. It was a square room, maybe 5 meters by 5 meters, with bare concrete walls and a heavy steel door. There were no windows. In the opposite corner, stirring with a groan, was Mr. Tanaka, his expensive suit now rumpled and stained. Near him was Yui pushing herself into a sitting position, her eyes wide with a terror I was still too disoriented to feel. My pockets were empty. No phone, no wallet, no keys. My watch was gone. They were now gone. We were stripped of everything. It was a clean slate, a new terrible system. Panic is an inefficient response. I pushed it down and started my analysis. The walls were solid, poured concrete. The door was seamless, no visible hinges or locks on our side. High in one corner, almost invisible against the gray, was the dark glint of a camera lens. Beside it, small grated speaker. This was an observation room, a cage. As I pointed it out to the others, a crackle came from the speaker. It wasn't the calm digital voice from my apartment. This one was a nightmare. It was a low guttural rattle, like a man trying to speak through a throat full of gravel and broken glass. "Welcome," the voice coughed, the sound wet and ancient.
you have all been selected because you are weak. Cogs in a machine that had discarded better men than you. Mr. Tanaka started yelling, demanding to be let go. But the rattling voice just chuckled. The horrible phlegmy sound. Your titles, your money, they are worthless here. Here you will learn what true strength is. A section of the wall opposite the door slid open with a grinding screech, revealing a dark, narrow tunnel. Inside, I could see a complex arrangement of pipes and wires. Your first lesson in teamwork. The room is slowly filling with an odorless, non-toxic, but highly flammable gas. The door at the end of that tunnel is your only exit. However, it is electrified. To open it, you must work together to solve the simple wiring puzzle within the tunnel. Oh, and one more thing. The lights in the tunnel flickered on, revealing that the pipes were leaking a thick, dark fluid on the floor. Hanging from the ceiling, swinging ever so slightly, were several old kerosene lanterns with lit wicks. I do hope none of you are clumsy.
He laid out the parameters. The green button would open a door for me, leading to the surface. Freedom. Back to my apartment, my models, my optimized life. It would also, however, trigger a sanitation protocol for the previous room. A final, fatal trap for my coworkers. The red button would begin a complex, high-risk rescue scenario. The schematics flashed on the screen, a multi-stage mechanical puzzle, a series of timed gears, a pressure-sensitive counterweight, a 3-person synchronization sequence to deactivate a series of magnetic locks, all against a time limit so tight it was almost statistically impossible. Failure at any stage would kill everyone. The choice was not a choice, it was a calculation. I analyzed the red button scenario. I ran the simulation in my head. I saw the exact points of failure. I saw Yui, her hands trembling, fumbling the synchronization sequence. I saw Tanaka, his arrogance returning, trying to force a gear that required finesse. I saw a dozen ways their inefficiency would cascade into a total system failure. The probability of group survival was ridiculously low. I estimated it at less than 4%. Then I analyzed the green button. On this side, 100% probability of my survival. I thought of Kenji. I thought of the rushing water and the catastrophic failure of the group. The data was clear. That day, my error was trusting the group over the data. I had let emotion, the desire to belong, corrupt my logic. The red button was the same test. It was an invitation to trust a 4% chance based on what? Hope? Solidarity? They were just words for statistical outliers. Relying on others is inherently dangerous. Trusting the system of one, myself, is the only logical path to survival. I didn't hesitate. I didn't look at their terrified faces on the monitor. They weren't people. They were flawed components, and this was a simple diagnostic. They had failed. I pressed the green button. There was a short, muffled scream from the speaker as the ceiling of the other room began to descend. Then a sickening, wet crunch as the mechanism completed its cycle. Then silence. The monitor went black. Feedback.
The system was purged of its inefficient variables. A heavy steel door slid open behind me, revealing a long concrete corridor lit by a single, steady light at the far end. My exit. Congratulations, Haruto. You have proven your strength. You are free to go. I took a single step toward the exit, and I stopped. I stood in the corridor, listening to the hum of the light. I thought about what was at the end of that tunnel. My apartment, my job, Mr. Tanaka's replacement, who would be just as inefficient, a new Yui just as prone to panic, the noise, the illogical demands, the endless messy variables. Returning to the chaotic, illogical world outside felt like a regression. Here, in this bunker, there was a brutal clarity. There were rules. There were consequences. There was a system that worked. And I had mastered it. It was a sanctuary of pure, cold logic. I turned back and looked directly into the camera lens. I'm not leaving. I understand what you're doing. The inefficiency of the world outside, it needs to be corrected. There's a clarity here, a purpose. I paused, letting the statement hang in the sterile air. This wasn't an emotional plea. It was a job application. I want to help you. Your games are effective, but crude. They test physical limits, but they're inefficient at isolating the psychological variables. Your parameters are too broad. I can fix that. I can design tests. I can build better systems. I want to help you build the games.
For a long moment, there was only the low hum of the ventilation. I had presented my hypothesis, my proposal. The Gamemaster, as a fellow analyst, would see the logic. He was testing for strength, for survivors who could see the system. But he wasn't just finding survivors, he was recruiting. The digital voice in my apartment, the impossible lock, the karaoke test, it was all a pre-screening, an elaborate filter to find someone like me. Not a brute like Tanaka, not a mouse like Yui, a designer. Then a slow, rattling chuckle echoed from the speaker. It was a sound of profound satisfaction. Welcome home. And that was it. My old life ended in that white room. The door to the surface, to my old, inefficient life, slid shut with a heavy, final thud. Another door opened to my left, one I hadn't seen before. It led into a clean, well-lit workshop. I could see tools, computer consoles, and blueprints on the walls. It was beautiful. The memory of Kenji, once a source of guilt, was now a validation. He died because the group was weak. Tanaka and Yui died because they were weak. I survived because I was not. My greatest trauma wasn't a warning against failure. It was a blueprint for success. My fear wasn't of being trapped with others. It was of being trapped by their weakness. And now I was truly free. I'm no longer just a solver of problems. I am a creator of them. I am a systems engineer, and the human race is my new machine. It's filled with broken parts and inefficient code. It's time to run a full diagnostic.
The horrors linger. Thank you so much for watching or listening. By liking and subscribing, you're helping me summon the next chilling tale from the shadows. Join our community of the brave and prepare for what's to come.